This is the lecture for Arindam Chakrabarti's From the Fabric to the Weaver. So the first topic, existence as a genuine property and the ontological argument. So the the first two sentences, or the first three sentences in the article, beyond the quotes at the beginning, it says, whether God exists clearly is not a controversy concerning God. It is an issue about the world. This can be said without having to pronounce that existence is not a genuine property of individuals. So this point about whether or not existence is a genuine property of individuals, that's a reference to a certain sort of class of arguments about whether God exists. And these are known as the ontological arguments. And the way these go is that you think of the various properties that objects can have. So think of all the different properties that like this shirt has. It's like salmon colored and it's made of cloth and it's this large and so on. And the ontological argument says, think of something that has sort of every property or the most, every property to the most degree that it can have. So the most perfect object, the thing that has, that's not lacking anything, it's got every sort of property, that would be God. And now you ask, does God exist? Well, here's one property, existing. If God does not exist, then God lacks that property. So God is sort of less than fully perfect. God is not sort of complete and total. And so then that thing that doesn't exist that you're imagining that lacks that property, that's not actually God. That's like something less than God. That's not what I asked you to think about. I asked you to imagine the actual like perfect being, something with every property. Something with every property also has the property of existence, and so therefore God exists. So of course it gets much more complicated, but that's basically the ontological argument. And one response to the ontological argument is that existence is not like a property like color or size or shape or anything like this. Existence is something else. So that's part of a debate about whether God exists. And of course, Chakrabarti says, you know, this sort of question about whether God exists is one that we're going to look at without bothering with this sort of property stuff. So this is just putting the ontological argument aside in this article. And in fact, we're going to put the ontological argument aside in this whole unit. We're not going to be looking at ontological arguments for the existence of God. Immediately after this, he says, in the classical Indian inference schema, A has F because it has G, like B, and the subject of the conclusion, A, must be agreed by both parties to be real on pain of the fallacy of the unestablished place. Accordingly, the changeful universe, or the cosmos, is the undisputed place with respect to which the putative property of having a creator is to be inferred on the basis of some mark, reason or ground, G in the schema, which will be demonstrably present in the place, the cosmos, and established to be invariably collated, blah, blah, blah. Before our philosophical examination of the argument can take off, we have to determine, therefore, at least three things. My cat is jumping around. What is precisely the place or subject of this inference? What is the property to be inferred or probandum? What is the proposed mark or probans or ground or reason? So we have these three things. We have the place, we have the property to be inferred, and we have the mark. And these all have synonyms. So as you can see up here, the place is also known as the subject of the inference. So there's this inference is this sort of process of reasoning that we're engaging in. So what is the thing that we're reasoning about? What is the thing we're asking a question about? What is the thing we're arguing about? What is the place? What is the property to be inferred, or the probandum? I say inferable also up there because Chakrabarti will sometimes use this term. So what is the property that we're saying the place has? What are we trying to figure out whether or not what is a feature of the place? And then what is the proposed mark or probans or grounds or reason? So what is the thing that convinces us that it has the property? What is the ground for thinking that it has the property? What is the reason for thinking that it has the property? Why believe that the place has the property? Why think that the subject has the probandum? Probandum just means thing to be proved. Probans is the grounds for proving it. So that I'm just noting this because these are maybe strange terms. Maybe some of them are strange terms, some of them are not, and he's using them as synonyms for each other. And so you just want to be clear like that you're tracking in your head these three different things and what they mean as you go on, because this is sort of the founding of the foundational structure of the argument we're going to be looking at. So he starts talking about arguments for God, and he says, although we see vaguely the outlines of causal argument of some sort here, we are not sure whether this is quite the cosmological argument as we know it in Western thought. Thus, the inference assumes more and more the form of a moral argument. Thus, a teleological dimension is also added to it. So here he's describing various arguments for the existence of God. So the cosmological argument is the argument we're going to spend this unit looking at. So you're going to learn lots and lots about the cosmological argument. And as he puts it, this is a causal argument, but it's not clear whether it's quite the cosmological argument. So the cosmological argument is like a kind of causal argument. And I would say more about this, except again, since the whole unit is about cosmological arguments, pretty soon you'll figure out what those are all about. So just wait and see. And again, those are a kind of causal argument, so we'll see those. Moral arguments for the existence of God. There's lots of variation in these kinds of arguments, but basically the thought is there's some sort of like moral reason to think that God exists. So, it would be worse if God did not exist, and so God exists, or something like that. There's lots and lots of variation here, but basically there's some sort of moral reason for believing in God. And then teleological arguments for God's existence. So teleological comes from the Greek word telos, which means like aim or purpose or something. So something with a telos has a purpose or an aim or a goal. And the teleological argument basically says, look, the universe or parts of the universe seem purposive. They seem to have a purpose, or they seem to have been designed with a purpose, or they seem to have been designed with an aim or with a goal or something. They didn't just come around magically or randomly. It seems like some creator made things, and that's the sort of teleological kind of argument for the existence of God. We're not going to look at these kinds of arguments in this class, but that's another class of arguments. On page 30, and then throughout, and even on just the very first page when we started looking at this argument and the three things, and then throughout, but then also, for instance, on page 30, like on page 30, he says, a valid and sound mark is expected to have the following characteristics. And remember the mark from above, this is like the reason for believing that the subject has some sort of property. So what are the grounds for this? What are the reasons for this? Well, in order to be valid and sound, it has to have the following characteristics. It must exist in the place or subject of inference. It must not only exist in those places where the probandum or inferable property is known to be absent. It must exist in those places where they're inferable, blah, blah, blah. So all of these things. And where is this coming from? Or where are these sort of criteria coming from? Or where are these requirements coming from whenever he talks about them in the article? So he's drawing on, because he's looking at sort of Indian epistemology and sort of these are sort of established criteria that exist in the context that the arguments we're looking at were made. And so, philosophers are always thinking about how can we know things? How can we evaluate arguments? How can we believe our senses? How can we prove things exist? And so back when the cosmological argument we're looking at here was created, these were sort of the criteria that were applied to valid and sound marks. So these criteria are coming from a deep philosophical tradition. And so this is just to point out, like, I don't know, it almost seems like they come from nowhere. But what he's doing is he's explaining, like at the time and potentially still today, assuming they were correct, but like at least at the time, what sort of criteria were applied to arguments. And then on 32, and I think throughout other parts of the article, he uses the language of material and efficient causes. So he says God is supposed to be only the efficient cause and not the material cause of the universe. And he kind of explains what he means in this paragraph, but just to make it clearer, perhaps, a material cause is basically the material or the source of material out of which something is made. So the material cause of the shirt is cloth or cotton or polyester or whatever. The material cause of my body is I don't know, like carbon and whatever else my body is made out of. So that's the material cause of things. And so God is supposed to be only the efficient, so not the material cause of the universe, means that God is not what the universe is made out of. God is not making what the universe is made out of. God is not sort of creating the universe in the sense of like making the stuff of the universe. Rather, God is just the efficient cause of the universe. So, what is the efficient cause? That's maybe closest to what we use the word cause for normally. The efficient cause is the thing that sort of like makes the thing. So the efficient cause of the shirt is whoever sewed the shirt. The efficient cause of my body, I guess, is the sperm and egg combining and beginning to grow, and then I guess I don't know with the sort of growth process that carries on, like living things are maybe like the efficient cause of themselves. I don't know, but like the efficient cause of my glasses is whoever put the glasses together. So whoever like creates the thing, that's the efficient cause of a thing. Uh, and so this language is from ancient Greek philosophy, and that's just to explain what these mean because they show up throughout the article.